couple different people about this What is a Woman documentary that Matt Walsh did. And I'd heard of it several months ago and kind of dismissed it because I'm not a huge documentary guy. I question a lot of what I see in documentaries now. So I think you can make darn near anything be believable in a documentary. With enough money and enough production power, you can make anything look legit. But in recent months, I've got a son who's going to be going into kindergarten. Kindergarten's going to start this fall, and that really got my wheels turning to think, we're likely going to send him to public school. And so I guess I'm a bit embarrassed to acknowledge this, but some measure of fear became prevalent in my mind of like, oh my God, what's he going to be learning in that public school? And well, you think about this Matt Walsh documentary, What's a Woman? They're going to teach Jameson he could be a woman, and it's corruption and whatever. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit, but coupled with that, I think an important question to answer is, what is a man? So I hear that question often, what is a woman? I don't hear a lot of people saying or looking to provide a clear definition, especially for people who, enjoy life with Jesus, answering the question in a thoughtful way, what is a man and what are the key distinctives that we believe? So you can tackle that however you want and we can chop it up. But
yeah. Well, I think it is a legitimate question that needs to be asked again. We used to ask, what is a man? And then the whole feminist movement came along and we took the whole focus off men and on the woman. And there needed to be some focus there.
I know we've talked about that before where women have been now elevated back.
So now, you just don't talk about what a real man is. You just talk about what a real man ain't.
And you don't talk about what a real man is because you don't want to sound like you're putting women down?
Yeah, and because with the cancel culture atmosphere, to say anything positive about a man is risky.
Yeah. Because men are the oppressors.
They're the oppressor, yeah, and so to say anything positive about it is, you're putting yourself out there to get chopped. But we're here to be a counterculture. As we all know, our identity, to a large degree, is affirmed and determined by the community we're in. It's what the people around us say. When I was growing up in a rural setting, but I was with neighbors and uncles and first cousins and all that kind of stuff. I got my identity from those guys, the ones that were older, the ones that were younger. They told me what I was good at. They told me what I was bad at. And so I got a concept of who I was from my community. Now, I was blessed that most of my community was Christian, at least had a Christian worldview, Christian background. But now we're living in a culture where the community is confused about what is a man, what is masculinity.
Right.
So we're right to be concerned about our boys. And you cannot turn him over to a school, public or private, and say, y'all tell my boy who he is. So I think it's really time for men who care about their boys and their girls to create communities among your own friends and relationships, church if you're in one, where you are agreeing on certain values and agreeing on certain definitions of what defines them.
Okay, good. Here's where I get hung up, and I hope I hope to stay in line with where your mind is on this topic. But because I have 2 daughters and 1 son, I like to think of my role as their dad, in part, being that I affirm and my daughters, this is what it, and of course my wife would be most helpful in this, but this is what it means to be a woman. And this is what's good and right and beautiful about God creating them male and female. You're a female, you will grow into a woman, affirm and call out the capabilities and the callings that are unique to womanhood or being a female. And on the other side of the spectrum with my son, and hopefully I'll be able to be the one that does that with him. What am I calling out in my son that's unique to masculinity and unique to being a boy growing into a man? Here's the reason why I ask this. I was raised on a ranch and raised to hunt and fish and play sports and do things with my hands. And my sisters were, in a lot of ways, I mean, they did some of that, but they were raised to know how to cook and care for the home and take care of the younger siblings. Are there qualities that we can identify as being, no, this is uniquely a masculine trait that we would like to call up out of our boys? The reason why I'm asking this is because I know men, I have friends in my life who don't like to work with their hands. They don't like to hunt or fish. They're not athletic. They might enjoy fashion or, art or cooking. I don't think it's right or fair to say, well, they're not masculine.
Right.
And they're not men. These guys are heterosexual, Christian, have a wife and kids. So how do you reconcile that? Like, what am I calling up in my son that I'm not also calling up in my daughter? What are the key differences?
Well, let me back up a little bit before I get to that part and just talk about parenting, being a father. All right, so your daughter has been created by God to be a female, to be a woman, to be feminine. That's the DNA. That's what God is working in her. If you're not even there, he's working that.
Yep.
Your job is to come along as God's partner and partner with him in helping her to discover what does that mean. And so a lot of it is, instead of seeing me as the molder of her, I am the partner with her. I'm partnering with God as I encourage her in the realms that she's going to go. Because she may like to hunt and fish and ride and rope and all that kind of stuff. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
As long as she is not confused about that activity is identified with this identity. No, you are a woman, you're a queen. And I, as a father, am going to treat you as a queen so you'll know what being a queen feels like. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to treat you with the sensitivity that you are growing into whoever God called you to be. So, same way with a boy. So we're coming along beside the boy to say, I am God's partner here to try to help you discover what's going on in your life, the interest that you have. So he comes along and he has an interest that you never had as a boy. Okay, you can't say, hey,
that's not a man thing.
That's not a man.
Right.
Your granddaddy didn't do that. I don't do that. You can't do that. No, it's like, okay, you want to investigate that? Let's investigate it together.
Okay.
And so I am there to assist him and go along with him, believing that God is directing him and leading him according to God's definition of who he is. He's a boy. He's a male. He's got the chromosomes of a male. God did that. So instead of seeing ourselves as the molder and taking too much blame and credit for what they turn out, it's like, no, I'm there to partner. That doesn't mean that I don't put boundaries there, that there's not rewards and punishments for choices, because they've got to learn that choices have consequences. It doesn't eliminate any of that, but it takes the pressure off of me from being a dad. It's like I got to make a godly boy out of him, or I've got to make and I'm not even sure I know what a guy is, because when I came along, it was these parameters. Now it's these
Right.
parameters.
Well, so that okay, I think we're zeroing in on the crux of my question, and as we're talking, I'm probably trying to discover what my question really is. But I know I've shared this with you once before. Jameson's 3-4 years old a couple years ago, and my wheels get to turn. I'm doing what you just said I don't really have to do, but I'm like, I've got to make sure he knows that he's a man, and this is what being a man, or this is what being a man would one day look like. So we had this little saying, men are, and he would say back to me, they're kind, respectful, hardworking, and tough. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, this is good. I'm nailing it. And Corinne, my wife, heard me saying this with Jameson one day, and she said, well, that's awesome, but you also know that women, to a certain degree, are also called to be kind, respectful, hardworking, and tough.
Yeah.
So in training Jameson to know that this is what men are, I'm still not creating any distinctions for him of any differences, key and legitimate differences between men and women. So I could also say the same 4 things with my little girl,
Sure.
Lucia, and that would be good and right, and that is an appropriate thing to which we call her up. But that's where I'm trying to get into the weeds here a bit and say, okay, if you had a chalkboard right now and you were going to write out, I'm not talking about the middle of the Venn diagram. I'm talking about the respective categories. These are descriptives for a female, and maybe specifically a female who wants to know and love and follow Jesus. And these are descriptives and distinctives for a man who also wants to follow Jesus. Is there anything unique, aside from their reproductive organs, between the two?
Well, the answer obviously is yes. They're unique, they're different. Otherwise, God would not have created it that way. But here's where I think we need to focus. Let's focus on that which is common. Let's focus on kindness and sensitivity and toughness and courage and all those things that he named. It's just that as you walk along with her, toughness is going to look different with her.
Okay.
It's not going to be about wrestling in the floor and whipping somebody, or necessarily competing, and it's going to be toughness of mental thought, toughness of emotion, toughness of sticking in there. When the boy would run because he saw blood, she wouldn't run because she saw blood. She'd run to it, probably. So I think that we have to focus on what's common to us as humans and common to us as Christians, and then watch that help them identify, this is kindness in Jameson's. This is a Jameson kindness, but this is your kind of kindness, and Rosie, this is your kind of kindness.
Yep.
And so I think that's where parents can come along and help direct without trying to put them in a box.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I could say, boys are tough and competitive, and leaders, and girls are tender and sensitive and followers. That's not right. That's an artificial deal.
Yep.
And it's going to cause them confusion. And I just think we have to assume what God says is true. It's like, that boy is a boy, and if nobody messes with him, he's going to think like a boy. And she's a girl, and God is working with her as a girl. So, all that being said, I do think there are things that we see as we observe men as they develop. And we see that men are, well, Leanne Payne wrote a book years ago on masculinity, and she said that masculinity is all tied up in discovering, declaring, and defending truth. So she puts that at the center. It's like men have been given the responsibility for their women, for their community, for everybody, to be that instrument that God uses to declare reality, to discover it, declare it, and defend it. And so it's truth that we're defending, not an ideal or some kind of artificial identity or a standard or whatever. We're defending truth. What is real? Wouldn't it be good today in this community, in this environment, if somebody just stood up and said, okay, let's talk about what's real.
Yes.
You know, this man it's a real man, so a real woman. This is reality, not some fantasy or whatever. So when men by their own disqualification don't take the leadership, or because community or the society has said, we don't trust you anymore. Either way, if men are pushed out of the deal, reality suffers.
Yep.
Truth suffers.
Yep.